Hey there, Mr. Redder here. Welcome back to another episode of r/Entitled People Stories. Our first story we'll be reading today. Karen steals my family's name for her baby and refuses to change it. After that, am I the jerk for blowing up at my husband for lying to me about my sister and her baby leaving when he actually kicked her out? And after that, schedule me for evening shift? Make certain you know what you're doing. Now for every thumbs up this video gets, one Karen doesn't get to steal anyone's family name. But I love taking things that don't belong to me. So please smash that like button and subscribe and turn on notifications for new stories from Reddit every single day. Karen steals my family's name for her baby and refuses to change it. This is a throwaway because my brother-in-law, 24 male, knows my main account and sorry for the errors I'm posting from my phone. So my stepsister, 23 female, is having a new baby soon and my whole family is excited for her, and this will be the first grandbaby for my mother and stepfather. I, 25 male, am half white and half Polynesian. They are full white for reference. So the story. My family got together and is having a good time. We were all chatting in the living room and then the topic of the first grandbaby comes up between my mom and my stepsister. They're talking about what she will do with work and normal expecting talk when they start talking about names and my mom starts suggesting names like Sam and Riley. Then my sis says a Polynesian name. Think Leilani or along those lines. I was a little offended because the name has a lot of importance in my family. It has a very important meaning. I would go into more detail, but the name is so specific they would know who's posting this. She said she heard the name when talking to me. Duh, it's a family name, and it has been on her mind ever since, and she's just fallen in love with it. Polynesian names are very significant to the families and people with those names. In most Polynesian cultures, names tell a story and have a significance to the family. Only certain families can have these names because of respect and genealogy and honor, like a title. I get that it's not normal here in the US, but I was offended that she thinks she can just take a name from my family like that without even thinking about my customs. I feel like it was offensive to my people because she didn't even know where my family is from. I would always tell her the island my family is from, and she would be like, okay, whatevs. She doesn't know anything about the culture or customs. So I pulled her aside and in privacy told her I didn't feel comfortable with the name she had chosen. I told her the importance of names in my culture and how they have meaning, and I even offered to sit down with her and find a story or meaning she liked and translate it into a name of my people so she can still have a pretty name, but it would also not be taking from the culture. Then she got really mad at me and said that it doesn't matter, the culture, it's just a name, and why can't I just let her be happy? I told her I would never call her kid by that name because it would be offensive to my family and I. Then she got our family involved. They all started calling me names. So I tried to explain to them the meaning of names in my culture. They told me I was in America, not the island my family is from, so it doesn't matter. So I called them some names, and they could at least have some knowledge or some appreciation for my culture before they start taking from it. I want to know, am I the jerk for making such a big deal out of a name? Edit 1. I keep seeing I don't own the name. This is why I say culture, because back on the island I'm from, my family does actually own the name. You can't name someone that name unless you're in our family. That's why I say I know it's different in the US, but it's not like that in our culture. Edit 2. My grandpa said we are proud to share our culture. We'll teach you our dances and share our food, but we draw the line when you start taking our sacred family names. These names are passed down in our family like Americans would pass down war medals or a very important pocket watch. It's how we connect to family and our ancestors. I would be fine with any other name in my culture as long as it wasn't one of these. These names bring great pride to our families. We track them through what is basically a mural that are decades, if not hundreds of years old. I would explain it like these names were bestowed or given to us by God, for lack of a better analogy. That's what our family names mean to us. My stepsister has no relation to my Polynesian side and has always made fun of my name. When I pulled her aside, I tried to explain to her that the same way she has treated me is how other kids will treat her daughter. I have also been with my stepsister since I was 6. Not the jerk. I'm Tongan. My name is literally what connects me to 10 generations of ancestors before me. It's what helps other Tongans identify me from others in the world. If she wants to name her kids that, fine, so be it. but it's out of your hands if her kid in the future wants to know what it means and the significance behind it. Not the jerk. I've been highly disappointed by the people on this board before, but especially so today. This isn't a situation where someone just chose a random name without context because they liked it. This is a situation where a family member explained the importance of naming conventions within a culture that your stepsister is privy to as a guest. Your stepsister is choosing to alienate your family in a way that has already been explained to her as disrespectful. That makes her the jerk. Polynesians are already being priced out of their ancestral homelands by luxury resorts and affluent Americans. They can't even keep their culturally significant names? Goodness gracious. You're the jerk. You don't get to decide what names are off limits for someone else's baby. Edit. Not surprised I'm getting downvoted. That's Reddit for you. This sub just shows 1. How uneducated people are on Polynesian culture, and 2. How unwilling people are to learn. Every culture has different sacred things. For the Aboriginal people here in Australia, certain pictures can only be painted by certain people. In Commonwealth countries, you can't name your kid king or prince because those titles are reserved for people who are entitled to them. In Australia, you can't name your kid general or sergeant because those are titles reserved for people who have earned them. In your culture, certain names are reserved exclusively for a certain few people who are entitled to them. People should respect that. Not the jerk. Not the jerk. Yeah, usually I'm one of the no one owns a name camp, but anyone who says that here is just uneducated. Cultural names bear a great significance and shouldn't be taken and used just because it's pretty. I'm white, but I have a Polynesian family. My cousins, for example, because my aunt married a Polynesian man, and I wouldn't dream of taking a name from that culture even though I think they're beautiful. It's just not appropriate. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his stepsister? Please let us know. You could always name the baby Karen. I'd be honored. Am I the jerk for blowing up at my husband for lying to me about my sister and her baby leaving when he actually kicked her out? My sister, who's 20, got out of a terrible relationship and moved in with me and my husband and brought her 5-month-old son. She's dealing with a handful of issues from PPD to depression. I asked my husband if he'd be okay with her moving in, and he said absolutely. Not just this, but he was the one who picked her up and brought her home. She stayed for 2 weeks and helped around the house. My husband started complaining about the baby crying, but a newborn is expected to cry, especially at night. He said it's causing him stress, although I suggested he put on earbuds. He suddenly told me to forget it, and so I did. Last week, I had to go out of town to attend a friend's funeral without my husband. He said he wanted to stay with my sister to make sure she's okay. I returned home the next day and didn't find her or her baby home. My husband said she contacted a friend in another town and wanted to move with them and left that morning. He handed me a letter he claimed was from her. This felt so odd, especially after reading the letter. I called her phone many times, but turned out my husband found it and said she must have left it behind. I was worried. I had no means of contacting her to make sure she was okay. I contacted relatives, but they knew nothing. Yesterday, I got a call from an unknown number, and it was her. We talked, and she told me that she didn't leave on her own, but my husband kicked her out after telling her that she was no longer welcome, and she needed to take responsibility for her decisions. I was in shock as she explained that she's not with a friend, but at a shelter, and she has no money. I waited till he got home, and I blew up at him. He admitted he faked the letter and hid her phone, then argued that it's his house too, and he has a say, but he shouldn't have lied to me about my sister and causing her to be homeless. He said I was being unfair and wrong to lash out at him for wanting peace in his home. I went upstairs and refused to argue anymore. I told him I'm going to pick her up tomorrow, and he said he'd change the locks while I'm gone and I won't be allowed to bring her home. I'm thinking of going to a hotel, but he kept saying that I'm letting my sister affect our lives by prioritizing her. But there's a baby involved, my nephew, and I can't leave him homeless. I get that it's his house too, but I don't see why he's so against her staying. Edit. He returned home and we started arguing again. I couldn't take it anymore. I'm going to stay at a hotel for tonight, and I'm leaving in an hour or so. He's wanting to talk again now, but I'm incredibly overwhelmed and stressed out, and I need some time by myself. I don't care if he's going to change the locks or not. I'm working on meeting up with my sister as soon as possible so we can talk more openly about what happened and hopefully try and figure something out. Not the jerk. He waited until you were out of town so that you couldn't object, so that you couldn't protect her, as he not only kicked her out, but took her phone so she couldn't contact you. He's dangerous. He threw her and the baby out into the street without a care in the world. Now he's threatening to lock you out of your own house. You need to divorce him immediately. He left them both out on the street and without protection because he was losing sleep and stressed. Now he's threatening to evict you from your own home. This is abhorrent. Bring her and the nephew back, consult an attorney, and get him out ASAP. Divorce the man. OMG. He went behind your back to do this to your loved one. He faked a letter. He hid her phone from you. This is completely out of proportion to anything that happened. This was unwarranted cruelty and a breach of trust. Get out of that relationship. He will absolutely repeat this behavior, not the jerk. He stole her phone and sent her to a homeless shelter with no phone. Like, I don't know anyone's numbers. If someone took my phone and sent me to a homeless shelter, I'd basically be stuck there forever because I'd never be able to call someone for help. It's super lucky OP's sister was even able to get in contact. There is a lot wrong with this. 1. The lies and manipulative way your husband went about this. I'm not sure if there's any way of walking that back. You might want to consider leaving him just for that alone. 2. He cared so little about your sister and her baby that he put her out on the street. Again, that kind of lack of remorse is kind of a deal breaker, don't you think? 3. If you're married and live there, it is straight up illegal for him to change the locks on you. I could go on, but this is more than enough. Not the jerk. Girl, run for real. This guy is bad. You can't move forward with him from here, with this being a part of your history together. Find a place, maybe with your sister as a roommate, and move on with your life. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her husband? Please let us know. Hey, desperate times call for desperate measures. Just kidding, the guy's a jerk. Schedule me for evening shift? Make certain you know what you're doing. A couple of recent stories reminded me of something that happened way back when. I was a teenager and had a job at a hotel as a busboy in a coffee shop. We had about 95 seats, and on a Saturday and Sunday, we would do about 400 covers. It was busy, but I was good. After noon, things would slow down, so I would jump into the dish pit and help them catch up. One Sunday, the back-of-house manager and the general manager were having lunch, and they called me over. They asked me to take the next Saturday's evening shift in the dish pit. I reminded them that weekends were pretty busy and they would have a problem if I wasn't bussing on breakfast. They told me they would get someone else to cover bussing, but they really needed me in the dish pit that Saturday night. I agreed, but told them I would need to leave at 11 p.m. on the dot, as I relied on public transport to get home and there was no way I could work late. They said, no problem, and we had a deal. I showed up at 3 p.m. to absolute chaos. Guess who they had cover bussing? That's right, the dishwasher. The pit was absolutely stacked with dishes, and then I found out why they needed me on that shift. Banquets and the coffee shop use the same glassware, plates, and cutlery, and there was a massive banquet going on upstairs. When I got there, the cook line and the banquet crew were going nuts. Alexa, cancel. When I got there, the cook line and the banquet crew were going nuts, prepping and setting up tons of centerpieces, place settings, that sort of thing. We had bussing carts, and the banquet crew was loading them up and running them up the elevators to the banquet hall. It was pandemonium. The back-of-house manager kept yelling at me, "I need more forks right now!" And I was fishing through the dozens of bus pans from day shift, trying to get him the stuff he needed. It took a while, but I managed to do it for him. I took it with a grain of salt, since he was actually a pretty good guy, just stressed to the max. Finally, the banquet stuff all went upstairs, and I could clear the backlog. It took me until about 8 p.m. Then, nothing. There were about 400 people attending this banquet, and occasionally I would see a member of the banquet team come down, and I would ask them where the dish carts were. These guys treated me like crap and snapped that they would bring them down when they had a chance. Sure enough, it was about 10 p.m. when the parade of banquet bozos started wheeling cart after cart of dirty dishes in by the pit. There were tons of them, 30 or 40 at least, and none of the bus tubs were sorted. It was all just tossed in. They weren't even scraped into the trash. There was leftover food all over the plates. Just before 11 p.m., I see the back-of-house manager talking to his crew, and I went up to him. I was really ticked off. "What the heck am I supposed to do here?" I asked, gesturing to the carts. Wash the darn things, he snapped back. There's no time. I leave in 15 minutes, remember? Well, you'll just have to stay late. I can't. I have a bus to catch. If I miss it, I miss my connection, and that's the last bus. So no, I'm leaving, and I told you that last week. He starts getting irate, and I just took off my apron and left without a word. The next weekend, I arrive for my busboy shift, and I get called into the general manager's office. The back-of-house manager was there, and the general manager is asking me why I abandoned the dish pit in such chaos. As it turns out, nobody on the banquet crew would work the pit, and in the morning, there was nowhere near enough dishware and cutlery for the coffee shop. The dishwasher they had covering took one look at this mess in the back and quit on the spot. They had to close the coffee shop and lost out on a ton of money. I just looked at them and reminded them that when I said I would take the dish pit for that shift, that I would be leaving on time. It's not my fault that the banquet crew didn't start bringing down the carts until after 10 p.m. The general manager looked at the back-of-house manager and asked him what time they served the meals. 6 p.m. So you're telling me that your crew took over 3 hours to roll the dishes back downstairs and you didn't do anything about it? What the heck were they doing? Why didn't you assign 1 or 2 to push carts? Then I pointed out that all the carts weren't sorted and that the plates weren't even scraped. The back-of-house manager gave me the stink eye, and the general manager excused me and said to head down to the coffee shop and pick up the busing. The following weekend I came in, and there was a big notice targeted at the banquet guys. All bus pans were to contain only one item: 1 pan for dinner plates, 1 pan for side plates, 1 pan for hardware, another for cutlery. All dishes were to be in the dish pit no later than 15 minutes after being pulled from the table. All plates were to be scraped of excess food waste before going in the pan. The banquet crew was upset that they actually had to do their jobs, and the back-of-house manager was upset that a lowly busboy/dishwasher put him in the hot seat. They never asked me to take an evening shift again. Am I the jerk for telling my sister to stop projecting her insecurities onto other women? My sister and her husband are going through very public marital issues. To give you the condensed version, basically, my brother-in-law was caught cheating on my sister by my wife during an event. She happened to be working there as a bartender. My wife immediately told my sister, in private, without telling my brother-in-law that she knew. And my sister proceeded to get very angry with my wife, accusing her of ruining her marriage. This culminated in my sister breaking down and screaming at my wife during a family dinner, calling her a jerk who likes to break up marriages and a person with no hobbies. My sister's very public rant about my wife led to my brother-in-law admitting, in front of my family members, that he cheated. This, of course, led to more drama. This all happened a few months ago, and as far as I can tell, my sister and her husband are not going to split up. After this whole situation, I decided to distance myself from my family for a little bit. I thought that my sister needed time to process everything, and I didn't think it was fair to my wife to subject her to my sister's rage. I sent a long text message essentially telling her that I wanted her to sincerely apologize to my wife. My sister apologized, and I thought that it would be the end of that. My dad invited my wife and I to celebrate his birthday at his place. I knew that everyone would be there, including my sister and her husband, so I was a bit hesitant to go, but my wife assured me that everything would be all right. To start, everything was going well. My sister practically avoided us, which I didn't mind, and my brother-in-law was glued to her side the entire time, so we didn't really face any drama. Everyone was cordial towards one another, and no one mentioned my brother-in-law's infidelity. At one point, I think my wife asked my brother-in-law to move over so that she could sit down. She's currently on crutches. And when my brother-in-law got her a chair and helped her sit down, my sister got extremely mad at my wife for being too friendly with her man, her exact words. My wife was confused and explained that she just wanted a seat, but my sister wasn't having any of it. She started full-on yelling at my wife for doing what she always does and ruining other people's relationships. My sister has a loud voice, so literally everyone stopped and looked at her and my wife. My wife looked pretty embarrassed and just muttered a "sorry" and even wanted to go stand up. But I butted in and told my sister to stop yelling at my wife and stop acting extremely insecure in front of other women and go for counseling or something. For whatever reason, my sister ran out of the room crying after that, and my wife and I left soon after. My brother-in-law texted an apology on behalf of my sister, but told me that I was a little rude and that I should apologize. My wife thinks that I may have been too harsh. My entire family is split. Some are saying that I was too mean to her. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Text your brother-in-law back and suggest that if he stops cheating, that might also make things better. This. Brother-in-law has no right to complain. Sure, but brother-in-law isn't really the problem here. Of course he's a jerk, but the best case scenario is that this dumpster fire marriage ends. I'm guessing some couples have the emotional maturity and honesty to move past an infidelity, but this one clearly doesn't. So of the two poorly behaved people in this story, brother-in-law and sister, brother-in-law and his infidelity will one day, God willing, not be OP's problem. I'd honestly ignore him, but his sister and her delusions, insecurity, whatever you call it, that will be part of his family dynamic regardless, and that's more important to address. After all, she's not going to call it on her marriage and be able to work towards being less insane until she's ready to put the blame where it belongs. Your sister is absolutely projecting. Keep standing up for your wife, since your sister won't let her. Gotta slip a crutches joke in. Absolutely not the jerk. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his sister? Please let us know. Plot twist. They were in an open relationship and she just didn't want anyone to know. I've never laughed so hard. Karen was speechless. For the past 5 months, I've been working at this restaurant. It has its ups and downs, but so far I enjoy it. Anyways, some important background information first. We hire kids. When I say kids, I mean 15 and older, and we have about 6 of them that work with us. They work as bussers, hosts, or food runners. They aren't bad. Sometimes they can be a little too much, but sometimes they can be just downright hilarious. This is one of those times. On to the story. I was serving tables outside on our patio. The restaurant was full, we were all busy, and I had a 6-table section. There was one table in particular that was just downright horrible, a 4-top of old grouchy ladies. The main one complained about everything, her drinks, having her seat being next to the door, it was too hot outside, you name it. She complained about it. She was probably in her 60s, and so were her other horrible friends. I knew their food was running up. In all honesty, I could have ran the food by myself. I wasn't in the weeds by any means, but I just didn't want to deal with them right now. So I let our food runner do it. Now this particular food runner was one of our 15-year-olds. He was very brazen, bold, and had no fear of consequences, and was one of the most downright savage teenagers I've ever met. I was at another table, one that was directly across from this horrific Karen table. I had my back faced towards the group of Karens. I was talking and taking the orders of my other table when I hear the sound of the food running boy naming each plate as he handed them to the older ladies. As soon as he's done, I hear the main Karen speak up. "My fish isn't cooked." I eavesdrop while taking the order. I already knew this was going to be bad. "Ma'am, you haven't even tried it," the boy says. "I don't need to try it. You can tell by looking at it. It's not done." Moments go by, and I hear a loud gasp come out of the main Karen. At this point, to heck with the table I'm at. I have to see this. I turn, and her mouth is wide open in this disgusted and shocked look. I look at the boy who was holding her plate and had just taken a bite out of her fish. I freeze. She's frozen. Everything is stopped except for this boy who is chewing her food. He swallows it, but doesn't put the plate back down. "Tastes pretty good to me," he says, and then he walks away, going through the door back inside. Karen is astounded. No words. I don't even know what to do at this point. I finish taking my table's order and walk straight past Karen and go back inside. I tell the manager that she didn't like the fish. They made her a new one and comped it off the check. I never told them what the boy did, but it did come out later because he was bragging about it to the other kids, and of course it spread like wildfire. He got reprimanded, not fired, just a warning. Now to this day, I'm never going to get that out of my head. The look on her face, how a 15-year-old just traumatized a Karen. I laugh every time I think about it. In case you're all curious, he finished the rest of her plate. Apparently he was hungry, and he still works with us. Am I the jerk for turning my husband's gaming room into an office? My husband is out of a job, has been for months now, and doesn't have any money because he spent it all on gaming gear and animals. I'm the breadwinner right now, and recently was given a work-from-home job. We have 2 kids that understandably make a lot of noise, so there's not a quiet spot in the house except the bedroom, but my husband refused to let me work from there and said that 1, it makes me look unprofessional, And 2, he doesn't want to be restricted from this space. I asked if he'd let me take his gaming room and turn it into an office temporarily. He said no. I had a fight with him and ended up moving his gaming stuff into the bedroom. He found out and lost his temper. I told him he left me no choice, especially after I offered a compromise to share the room. But since he plays at random times, he said no. He kept yelling at me, calling me irresponsible and a jerk. I finally told him that this is part of the house that is my space too, but he said, No, your space is the kitchen. This pushed me to lash back at him and he left, but said by the time he got back, everything needed to be put back. He came home drunk, so I didn't want to fight with him. He then kept ranting about wanting his room back, even after I tried to convince him to play in the bedroom all he wants. Yet he's not having it and wants the atmosphere his gaming room has. Am I the jerk for this, or is he being unreasonable? I'll give him the room back if it turns out that I'm the jerk, okay? ETA, some clarifications. A. When he said my space is the kitchen, I think what he meant is that I control everything there, from decoration to appliances, and I spend more time there compared to him. B. He used to contribute in a lot of things when he had a job. He used to pay for the kids' needs and handle bills and groceries, while I handled other things. He makes sure to remind me about how much he used to do every day and tends to bring it up in every argument. He's not happy with losing his job, but circumstances are uncontrollable. Not the jerk. Can't work in your room, can't work in his gaming room, your kids need to be taken care of. Saying you belong in the kitchen is such a degrading comment. I hope things improve for you both. OP. Honestly, it's tiring having to even fight about this. I've offered more than a compromise, but he wasn't having any of it. I get that his gaming room is his personal space that he worked hard to create, but I wouldn't have done this if circumstances were different. You could put his stuff plus a bed in the gaming room and you take the bedroom, which he's no longer allowed in. Not the jerk. A space for working trumps an entire space for playing video games. Besides, while you're working, he's taking care of the kids and the housework since he's unemployed, right? No, your space is the kitchen? This sealed the deal for me. You're raising 3 kids. I'm a gamer myself, but if I were a stay-at-home dad, I'd be doing everything to make it easier for her while looking for a darn job. Then bro said that your space is the kitchen. I have no words. Might want to evaluate your marriage with this guy. Not saying divorce. Actually, I kind of am. But this dude needs a lesson. Not the jerk. Not the jerk. But what exactly is this dude bringing to the table, other than laziness, entitlement, and temper tantrums? Cheap father makes family wait for dinner for his well-done steak. This happened at a West Coast steakhouse. Every year on Thanksgiving, we would have a turkey special, which came with all the sides and dessert at one flat price. Most people came in for the turkey dinner, but some still ordered steak from the menu. As a server, I would let the guests who did order steak know that it would be just a few minutes longer than their turkey dinner, being that the turkey and sides were just plate and serve, which came out under 5 minutes, and most were fine with that. One table was a tin top where everyone at the table ordered the turkey special, but the father of the family wanted a T-bone steak and well done. I informed them that it would be a bit longer than the turkey, and if it was okay to bring the rest of the meals out first while he waited for the steak. No, we're a family and we all eat together. So I immediately punch up his steak and the 9 turkey dinners. Lo and behold, after 10 minutes, this father is demanding his steak while the rest of the family is just staring at each other waiting for their turkey. Sir, you asked for a well-done T-bone steak, and it's full house right now. It will probably be another 10 to 15 minutes for it to come out. This is unacceptable. My family is starving, and they want to eat already. Then maybe you should have allowed me to bring out the rest of the food, and you could have waited for one steak. How dare you speak to me this way? I want to see the manager. I had already informed my boss, and he was within earshot. Boss told him the same thing and said he would bring out the steak as soon as it was done, with the rest of the food. 15 minutes passes, and all the food hits the table. Finally, it's about time, the father exclaims. My boss and me say nothing, just enjoy, and if there's anything else we can bring you. Father says nothing and begins to eat, while the rest of the table is just staring daggers at him. Fast forward, everyone was finished with dessert. I bring the check and tell them thank you and will pick up their check when they're ready. I had not walked away a few feet when father is demanding Why is there gratuity on the bill? I inform him tables 6 or more get auto gratuity. I want to see the managed.
Goodness, would you shut up already?
Chimes in the grandmother at the other end of the table.
If you had not made us wait, we would have had a nice family dinner.
Turns to me and asks me to bring her the check. He wasn't going to pay anyways. She looks at the bill, hands over her credit card, and thanks me for everything. When I come back, no one is talking to father, and they're just ignoring him. Wow, sounds like my father when I was a kid. We were sometimes eating out, and it was always my father who completely ruined our dinner experience, and it was always my mother who paid the bill. He was selfish, always rude to staff, and yelled at us very often. My mother got fed up with his behavior, and we've never been out to eat with my father since I was 10. Are you my sibling? I could right now tell you 4 very vivid memories from the 4 times we ate out as a family, in which I was ridiculously embarrassed, and in 2, reduced to tears, and another time we were kicked out because my dad accused the server of trying to hurt me. I hope you've gotten over the pain better than I have. Have you ever been embarrassed by your parents at a restaurant? Please let us know. Haven't we all, Reddit boy? Haven't we all? Support our channel by joining as a member today, and we'll give you a shout out in our next video. Or come watch this video next. You won't believe what Karen does in that one.